Well, to discuss NELFUND's efforts in supporting access to higher education through the Student Loan Initiative and how the fund is working to balance academic education with vocational and technical training, ensuring that Nigerian youths are equipped with employable skills, is the Managing Director of NELFUND, Akintunde Sawyerr. Glad to have you join us, Doctor.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back here again.
Yeah, glad to discuss.
Happy New Year as well.
Same to you, discuss with you once again. Our applications commenced in 2024. Disbursement started February 2025, and you have disbursed a total of 154 billion, if I'm correct, to many students. How has the journey been, the milestone? Have all the students been captured?
Okay, first of all, let me correct the numbers. And I know that the Honourable Minister for Information gave some numbers out. But since then, the numbers have gone up, so it continues to be on the upward trajectory. So far, we have disbursed 161 billion, and there are over 864,000 beneficiaries. So it's good news all around. There's demand, and those demands are being met. Interesting.
Mid-2025, you paused the disbursement of the 20,000 monthly upkeep allowance.
Yes.
Then you came up with new guidelines. Why did you pause? What informed the new guidelines? Have you commenced or recommenced, as it were?
Okay, you know, whenever you're running a scheme like this, one of the things that you have to do is, especially because it's a brand new scheme, is that you have to take stock every so often of where you are. You have to see and understand the impact that you're having as a program, and you have to see how the program in itself is being received and is being administered. So we never actually stopped the stipend. What happens with stipend is that you only receive the stipend when you're in school. So even though the idea or the budgeting is that you get a 12-month stipend, which is the period of time the session normally lasts, you only begin to receive the stipend from when the application is approved, which in itself is dependent on when the application is made. So for some people, if they make the application right at the beginning of the session, they may well get 12 months worth of stipend. For other people, it may be that they applied halfway through, in which case they get 6 months worth. There's a big confusion out there, which we are trying to sort of manage. The stipends aren't an entire session stipend. They're stipends that are dependent on when you're in session. So we had to stop applications at a particular point, as I say, just to take stock and to ensure that we were able to upload and upgrade our systems to make them more efficient, because as you're probably aware, our system is totally without human interface. It's all technology dependent, and with technology you've got to upgrade, you've got to make sure that it's fit for purpose, you've got to iron out glitches, you've got to learn from any errors that may be in it. And you've also got to make sure that people know how to interact with it, and you've got to train. So one of the things that we had to do was train the ICT directors in the tertiary institutions on how to upload, how to verify, and how to ensure that they're in constant communication with us so that we can make the system more efficient, faster, more effective.
You have actually answered one of my questions on the upgrade, the system you talked about.
Yeah.
But now that you've mentioned application, I was going to go to some other thing, but now that you've mentioned application, how has the application process been? Explain what you really mean when you say eligibility concerning application. What does it really mean?
Okay, so there is a law that backs the setting up of NELFUND, and there are certain requirements. And we work on the basis of the law and then the guidelines that we put in place to ensure that that law is effectively working, if you like. So in terms of eligibility, if I just go to the law, you must, to apply for this loan and to be eligible for this loan, you must be a Nigerian. And remember I talked about the fact that we use technology. To verify that you're Nigerian, you have to have an NIN, a national identity number. You must have entered the institution, moving to our guidelines, using JAMB. So if you haven't accessed the institution using JAMB, then you're not eligible, unfortunately. Once you've accessed the institution, you look surprised.
Yeah, because let me stop you there a little.
Yeah.
Are you saying that those who enter through direct entry?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So we have set as our guidelines a requirement that you have accessed the institution having taken the JAMB exam and passed it. and access the institution. You know, one of the things we must be mindful of in all of this is, whilst we're providing access to education by providing financing, it is not a scholarship. So we're not checking to see how bright you are, how smart you are, how intelligent you are. However, there has to be a standard. And the standard that we have set is that you have access to the institution through JAM. This has long-term implications, because when you eventually graduate, there may be some requirement from employers and others to say, okay, how did you actually access the institution? That's not to say that people who don't have JAM can't go on and do good things or great things, but we have to set a standard.
That's your standard.
That is our standard.
That's your standard. I mean, people are allowed to set their standards. Yeah. I talked about it when I read the intro. How is the fund working to balance academic education with vocational and technical training to equip Nigerian youth with employable skills? I'm sure you must have had in some quarters that our students are not employable because of skill acquisition.
Yeah, this is a really great question and a really big dilemma for us as a nation. You know, every nation has thinkers and doers. You can't have a nation that just has philosophers, people who are just coming up with ideas all the time, people who are academic. You also have to have people who do the implementing of those who are doing the thinking. Now, I can tell you that this country has a disproportionate number of thinkers over doers. Now, many people want to do, many people want to get things done, but they don't necessarily have the skills, they don't have the qualifications, they don't have the adequate training. So vocational skills are critical to national development, critical to tapping into the potential resources of the very creative people that we call Nigerians or Nigeria's youth. We can't ignore the thinkers, because somebody's got to design the house that somebody else is going to build. Yeah. So, you know, currently we started by focusing on those who are already in academic institutions for a very good reason. Those are better structured than the technical side. The technical training side in this country has gone to pot, and that's got to be rebuilt. And the Ministry of Education under Dr. Tunji Alausa has taken the leap into trying to pioneer that. We are working in partnership with them to develop the vocational side. And that looks like it's going to go very well. There's a bit of a revolution going on that side. But if I give you an example, the people on that side, on the vocational side, the majority of the people on the vocational side are largely undocumented. They don't necessarily have NIN, they don't necessarily have bank accounts, they don't necessarily have qualifications that take them to the place where we can say, this individual, this is the level they're at, this is where we want to take them to. So we've started with the academic side, but there's a very sharp focus on the vocational side.
I have a limited time. I want to see what I can get in under 2 minutes.
Sure.
With you. The question of the exorbitant cost of education. Parents are finding it hard to cope, even withdrawing words from school. How's the fund helping parents carry this burden real time? What is the long-term plan for sustainability of this program? You know how governments come and governments go and things change and are dropped. And of course, I've discussed with you on this program once, we've discussed about this, so I'm going back to it, repayment of the loan.
There are 3 questions there. So one, you talked about the exorbitant cost of education. Unfortunately, education is not cheap. You know, good education is not inexpensive. And one of the things that His Excellency, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR is trying to do is to make sure that in the first instance, we give access to education by taking away the financial burden. NELFUND pays the fees, all the charges at tertiary institutions owned by government, and then we provide a stipend so that the students can actually get to class, they can actually get to school. In terms of the sustainability of this, in the long term, we're going to need to have private sector participation in this. A lot of people in this country, their fees are paid by various philanthropists, people who care, by parents. So we're going to have to find a way of harnessing that and ensuring that it works with the fund. The beautiful thing about what the President has done with this fund is that when he put the bill to the House, to the National Assembly, he allowed NELFUND to seek donations. He allowed NELFUND to invest its funds so that we can actually get an income rather than being totally dependent. The sustainability around that is somewhat assured if we implement that process properly. Okay. Now, The second thing that that does, of course, is that it then begins to reduce the dependence on government. So your question around governments coming and governments going, I think the president has thought it through. He wants this to be a project or a program that goes, if you like, into eternity, because education never ends. So what he's done is he's put in some specific lampposts, if I can use that expression, that allow us to tie our hats to the things that are going to make this carry on spinning and carry on working. So I think, you know, there's a lot that we can do.
Then the last, just briefly,
Sure.
the payment, repayment.
Oh yes, of course. So, you know, what we are trying to do is ensure that people access this without the fear of being chased down or, you know, being hounded.
Very important.
Very important, because what we're saying effectively...
Otherwise they can't concentrate to read.
They can't focus.
And so it's useless.
It's an interest-free loan. That's the first sweetener in all of this. The second thing is the students, the loanees, the obligors, don't have to start paying back until 2 years after the completion of their NYSC. So the earliest time they are obliged to pay back, even though they can pay back voluntarily before that time, the earliest time they're obliged to pay back is 2 years post NYSC. Now, even then, it is only when they found a job, and it's the employers that deduct 10% and pays it back to the fund. Now, remember what I said about sustainability. This program isn't entirely dependent on repayment for sustainability. There are other ways in which we're going to sustain it.
I was just going to add that when they get a job. Thank you so much, Managing Director of NELFUND, Akintunde Sawyerr.
Thank you indeed.